I was 24, probably the best shape ever in my life, super healthy. Um, my period has always been really heavy, so I've always had to use super absorbent tampons. And my mom had told me about toxic shock syndrome. She had told me, obviously, how to use them properly, change them every 3 hours. But on that specific day, I, like any normal day, it was just on my period. It was super heavy and I ran out of my tampons, so I ran and bought a new box. And I just remember feeling super sick, like almost as if like the flu. It was October, so flu season. All of my friends were getting sick. And I had to go to my friend's birthday that night. I changed my tampon, obviously. And I'm just laying there, probably, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes. I start feeling even worse. And I'm like, wow, I'm really feeling sick. I'm texting with my friends, a couple hours go by, change my tampon again. So this is the second time I've changed it. It's about now, like, I don't know, 5, 6 p.m. And I have to get ready to go to my friend's birthday. So I get in the shower, get myself together, put another tampon in. And as soon as I drive and I walk into the venue, all of my friends are in there and they're just like, dude, you look so sick. And I felt it. Like, I finally in that moment felt like this like whole wave of like heat and also just something is not right. And I'm like, yeah, I think I should probably just go home. So I drive myself back home. My mom and I are super close, so we chat every 5 minutes. We're always in communication. And I was like, yeah, I'm just feeling kind of unwell, but I think I'm okay. And then I get to my apartment and I'm just like really, really hot. So I just take off all of my clothes and I just like lay on the floor by my bed with my dog. And I guess I must have passed out. And my mom's frantically trying to like get in contact with me and she can't get a hold of me, but she knew that I was feeling ill. So she called the police to come by for a welfare check. So I'm laying on, I remember this because I was laying on my bedroom floor and I just remember my blind Cocker Spaniel like literally on my chest. And you know a Cocker Spaniel, like they're so sweet and friendly, and she was like ferociously like barking at me to where like I could feel her like breath and her like spit almost. And she was just like so like adamant about like getting me up, like jumping on me and stuff. And then I hear like the knock at the door and I hear police open up. And I'm like, what? Like, what's going on? Like, why are the police here? So confused. But at this time, I was already accumulating like 107 fever. So I was pretty much like just not in any shape or form, like making any real decisions because I'm just so discombobulated of like even what's going on. So I like throw on a hoodie and I open the door and the cop comes in and he looks at me and he's like, you're really sick. And I'm like, no shit, like obviously. And he looks around my apartment and I think like I didn't even have a chance to take my dog out. So I'm sure there was like pee and whatever. And he's like, you're really sick, you need to call your mom. And I'm like, okay. And then he's like, so I plugged in my phone and he just fucking left. The cop just left me. So then I like plug my phone in, I text my mom, like, the cop just came. Obviously I'm really sick, but I think I just have the flu. And I mean, he's a cop, so I think if there was any real urgency, he would take me to the emergency room. And at that point, I'm in Santa Monica and I'm living 5 minutes from St. John's. Like you could see St. John's from my balcony of my apartment. Yeah, this hospital that saved my life.
How long had you been on the floor?
Probably a few hours.
Okay.
But she was like, after speaking to her, clearly she has that motherly instinct to be like, something doesn't sit well. So I said, listen, the cop just left. Obviously, I think I'm okay. I just need to just sleep this off. And I'll call you in the morning. And that was the last we spoke. Obviously, that doesn't sit well with her. So she feels the need to get another welfare check. She gets her husband to drive her. She was just had surgery, so she was bedridden. And she was living in Riverside at the time, which is like, it could take up to like an hour or two to even get to me. So she called all of her friends, all of my friends, called the police again to come to my apartment to like see how I'm doing or get me help or something. So once she did that, the cops came again and it took them like 30 to 45 minutes to get inside of my apartment. and they found me face down on my bedroom floor, defecated, basically myself and everything around me. I was dying. I was 10 minutes from death. They rushed me to St. John's, and they were like, why is this healthy, young 24-year-old girl plummeting? They didn't get it. And thank God there was an infectious disease doctor that was on call, and he said, well, does she have a tampon in? And once they located the tampon and they sent it to the lab, it came back as TSS1, and that's when they were able to finally kind of get me stable and give me the things that my body was more susceptible to accepting at that time, because it was really grim. And I had 2 heart attacks. My kidneys, my organs were failing. They put me on life support. I had 107 fever. They basically gave me a 1% chance of even surviving. So
TSS1?
Toxic shock syndrome caused by a tampon. It's because all of these tampons, feminine hygiene products that are available for women on the market right now, if we were to go look, they have chlorine, bleach, dioxin, all these synthetic fibers that we place inside of us at such a delicate time. And that just gets in your bloodstream and it slowly kills you. It's a gateway to everything. And those specific things are so toxic, you know? And then if you're using super absorbent tampons, the absorbency is way more than just a normal one. And even if you use a cotton tampon, it's still sprayed with pesticides. So there's actually nothing on the market for women that is safe for us. Everything has some sort of chemical in it.
So you're in hospital, they've given you a 1% chance of surviving, of living.
Mm-hmm.
And they've told your family, presumably, that your chance of survival is, you have a 99% chance of not surviving.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how your family had responded to that?
There was a whole line around St. John's of like everyone that I knew to say goodbye to me. Of course, my family too, but like I'm from LA. Like I've been around and know everyone, and to see that kind of response, especially during that, to where like people are actually coming to say their goodbyes and pay their respects, is just insane. Obviously, I don't know any of that, but that's just what I've been told. But it's just pretty crazy. And I was, you know, on life support, fighting for my life, and each moment was very grim.
You're in a coma?
Yeah, I was on life support in a coma for like a week and a half.
Have you found out went on while you were in a coma in terms of the treatments they were giving you to try and keep you alive?
So they gave me, they pumped me my whole body full of fluids because the toxins had taken over. So they pumped my body full of like 100 pounds of fluid. So when I finally woke up from the coma, I was 200 pounds. So like I'm tiny. And I woke up and I was just like, I thought I literally just had one of those nights where you just eat a bunch of donuts and candy and ice cream. And I was just like, is this what you know, I had no idea why I was literally and had tubes in my throat and machines everywhere. And my mom obviously like sitting right beside me and everyone freaking out that like I'm awake. And but what degree am I awake? Like no one specifically knew how damaged or what severity it was until I could actually like be awake to tell them or to show them. But yeah, it was really touch and go.
The rest of your family, your grandparents, your brother, were they around at that time?
Yeah, everyone was, all of my friends. I mean, it was really to that point. I mean, my godfather and my mom got a casket. They were going to plan my funeral. Like it was to that point of like, this girl probably will not make it.
And it's a bacterial infection.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with leaving your tampon in too long. I was changing the tampon as normal as I've always done, as normal as you should, as normal as directed. But again, I think it's about how toxic these tampons are and how they sit in our bodies. And, you know, it just takes one of those toxins to get in our bloodstream, and it starts that kind of flu-like symptoms. But that's so vague. That's so... yeah, I just think that could mean so many things. And even now, I would never be able to differentiate oh yeah, my tampon is making me sick. I would never think that. But now that I have all the information, and obviously knowing that like I'm just a lucky one that got away with my life, you know, looking back on it, I'm like, wow, like it's crazy that almost killed me. And it's killed hundreds and thousands of women since the 80s, the early 80s to now. It's still an epidemic that's never gone away.
Was it by chance that that particular doctor was on call that day that asked about, does she have a tampon in?
Oh, I'm so grateful, because that in itself is a miracle, that there was someone that knows about toxic shock syndrome and, you know, understands the dangers and was there and saw, you know, the symptoms that I was obviously showing, and had even the idea to ask or to look or to, you know, say this could be it. This could probably be why this girl is literally dying right before us.
But it says a lot that they would ask that question. It says that there's clearly a long history of that being a causal factor for illness, if a doctor would even ask that question.
But the sad thing is a lot of it goes misdiagnosed a lot of the time, and a lot of people just think it's doesn't happen, or it couldn't happen, or, you know, it was kind of swept under the rug by tampon companies because it's $1 billion industry, and, you know, no one ever saw someone like myself survive it and then being able to say, hey, like this shouldn't be happening. Like this almost killed me. And that's why I even shared my story to begin with, is because I wanted women and I wanted the world to be aware that this is something that we shouldn't be taking lightly, and that we need to demand for safer products, and also demand, like, why is this still happening? And, you know, obviously then it was 2012, but here we are 2023, and young women more than ever are in danger.
I read that the doctors were telling your mother to start praying that you would stay alive.
Yeah.
And that the doctors were praying.
I think everyone was praying. It was really dark. It was like I feel so bad for my mom, because I can't even imagine to like what degree she, you know, seeing me in that state, and then every moment is like, you know, when this machine's going off, you know, she's literally sitting on a cot next to me, just staring and hoping that I'd even come to, you know. And
you were her best friend as well at that point.
Yeah, and it just probably was so hard.
You start to wake up.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about what happened from that point onwards when you start to regain consciousness? What did you hear? What did you see?
Again, I think when I first woke up, it was just pure shock. I didn't know why I was so big. I didn't know why I had the breathing tubes. And the crazy thing too is, I guess during the whole time when I was in a coma, my feet were turning black slowly, because a lot of the damage was done when my body was dying. So all of the blood went to like my brain, my heart, my organs, and my everything. And so your lower extremities, or your extremities, if that, don't really get the blood because you're dying. So they're going to preserve the goods first, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that damage was irreversible, because I was, I don't know, on my bedroom floor alone, dying for, I don't know, a couple hours, I guess, you know, and that time, a lot of that damage was done to my lower extremities, but also it was happening to my hands too. And so my hands were turning black too. And to this day, there's no reason why any medical physician can tell me why my hands came back and I didn't have to amputate. Like, they were thinking about amputating my legs and my hands while I was in the coma, because they were discolored and, you know, turning kind of purplish pink. And it's pretty crazy. Like, if I would have woken up and had no arms and no legs, I definitely don't think I would be here. There's no way. I don't think I'm that strong. There's just no way. But the idea of that is just kind of crazy. And maybe it's because, you know, my arms are closer to my heart and the blood flow came easier that way. But I think that's pretty crazy too.
When was the first time you were aware that there was a suggestion of amputating anything?
For the first time, I was alone in the ICU at St. John's, and it was just me sitting there, and my feet were just constantly on fire. Like, it literally felt as though someone was sitting there just lighting my foot on fire. Like, the burning sensation was insane. And my right leg was worse than my left. My toes on my left side were turning purplish pink, but my right side, there was a lot more damage, you could tell. And so then the concern came in of basically they needed to amputate my right leg to save my life, or I was going to die. And I had no idea about any of that. So I'm laying there, my room is empty, and there is a nurse that comes in, and she's on the other side of me behind a curtain, and I can hear the conversation. And she's saying, I have a young girl here who's 24 years old who's going to need a right leg below the knee amputation. And we need to get her in bed right away and into hyperbaric as soon as possible. So she's on the phone to UCLA to get me into UCLA because they have the best hyperbaric chambers there that basically it's like 200% oxygen that you go into, and it basically just like gets everything moving and the blood flow to everything. And so they were trying to get me a room, and I just remember hearing like, looking around and being like, she's talking about me. Like she's saying that I'm an amputation, like, and I just fucking started screaming. And I was screaming for my mom. I was screaming for my godfather. I was screaming for everyone. I was like, do not let anyone touch me. Do not let this, like, what is she saying? Like, tell her that's not true. Like, just completely unaware of like the severity of the situation for myself. And yeah, that was probably the first time where I like even heard the word amputation.
I can't believe you overheard it.
Yeah, it was like shocking. And then from there, I think I just was like, I'm fucking doomed. Because like, you know, being able to just walk and move, and obviously being an athlete and not having your legs, like I couldn't even wrap my head around that. Like, what does that even look like? And then having to like see your feet slowly just mummify, or your toes turn black. And, this one doctor, I remember, she said something like, yeah, you can just go home and, your toes will just fall off. And, like, this is before I got to the doctors that I needed, but that was like kind of the shit that I was presented with, of like people coming in and saying like, oh, well, this is just what's going to happen. And after that happens, then we'll figure it out. It's like, excuse me? And then like making a call and being like, this is absolutely like insane. No way is, that happening. Or
you just go home and your toes will fall off.
Yeah, as if that's like just the thing.
You come out of the hyperbaric chamber. I guess the hope was after coming out of the hyperbaric chamber that there'd be some kind of movement in your feet or something, right?
I had to do it like 3 times a day for hours on end. It was not just like one thing. It was just trying to see, especially immediately, how my body was responding and if it was responding and if there was any way they can salvage anything. And at that point, gangrene had set into my right leg and it was moving really, really fast. So that's when they were like, we need to amputate, like now.
And if they hadn't?
Then I would die.
A doctor said that to you?
Mm-hmm.
With your mother there?
Mm-hmm. And they were like, you have a 50-50 chance of ever walking again, as far as keeping my left side, because my toes would need to be amputated. I couldn't even fathom what that looked like. I was like, there's no way. There's no way. I was like, I have to do this slowly. I'll have to like maybe just do the one and then see what happens. But like there was no way I could go in there definitively and be like, just take them. So
when it becomes clear that that's the path forward, what's your initial response to the doctors when they come with the definitive answer that this is the path we have to take? How do you receive that? How does your mum receive that? Oh,
I was just like, just obviously just a nightmare, like crying, screaming, freaking out. Especially when I'm presented with the papers to have, them do the procedure to take my life. I mean, take my legs. And it felt like my life because that's all I knew of, like being an athlete, being a model, looking a certain way. Everything I knew about myself was completely just out the door. I mean, I was 200 pounds. My head was shaved because my hair got matted because they were trying to save my life. And obviously no one gives a shit about your hair when you're dying. And, here I am in a hospital room and being told that, you know, I'm going to enter this operating room and come out a completely different person and losing a part of myself. It was so surreal and so scary. And at that time I was so like depressed, and it was such a dark time that I was like, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I asked for. Like, I didn't sign something saying, okay, these are the possibilities. I could die, I could lose limbs. I was like, this shouldn't have fucking happened, you know? Let alone like I'm 24 years old and now I'm having to lose a part of myself, and it's something I can never ever get back. I can never grow it back. I can't go to a surgeon to get it. Like, this is going to change my life forever.
And you have to sign that paper.
And I had no choice, because otherwise, again, it was my life or it was my leg.
Did you consider not signing it?
No. I was in so much pain. I can't even tell you. Like, I don't even know how I made it. Like, of course, like I was drugged up so much, and I think that was how obviously I got through it. But just to have to actually process what was about to happen, I don't think I fully even gathered until I got down and they were like, I signed the papers and they're like, all right, it's today's surgery day, and like wheeling me out of my room down to the floor, and like me holding like a stuffed animal and just screaming and crying and like feeling like I'm doomed.
When you came out of hospital and you spent the next 8 months in a wheelchair in real pain, depressed,
very.
What were your prospects for life from your own perspective? What were you thinking your life was? If you thought about the future, if at all, what was the future for you in those moments?
I didn't have one. I definitely, I think that's also why I was so suicidal, is because I had this life, you know, I had everything at my fingertips. I was able to do everything and anything. And there were so many goals that I wanted to achieve, and I just wanted to live my life. I just thought, like, I just had so many hopes and dreams that in that moment of like sitting in my darkest room, because I didn't want to see the world, I had it like completely blacked out. And having to sit with myself and like seeing myself in a wheelchair. I mean, people who are in wheelchairs are my heroes, because I don't know how they face a world that's not meant for them. It's hard. It's so hard to go outside and to go and just do the simplest things, and to be looked at differently. Just things that we as people who are able to just be able-bodied or have prosthetics or move or whatever, how that challenges them, you know, and then face a world that kind of just looks at them and kind of doesn't, in a way. It's hard. Like, I don't think if I had to be in a wheelchair would I be that strong mentally. It takes a really strong person mentally to live that type of life. And I hold the utmost respect for anyone that has to live in a wheelchair or be in a wheelchair, because you're fucking a rock star and so strong. And for those 8 months, I was just like, there's no way I can live my life like this. There's no way I can. It's just not accessible. The world is not accessible. I learned that. It's just not.
What did you learn about the way that people in wheelchairs are viewed?
Or just people with disabilities in general. I think it's just like, there's just like stigma of incapable, because you maybe look a certain way, or because you're confined in a certain space, or the world is not built for that. The world is built for, you know, run in, walk stairs, you know, shower, even just step. Like, people forget that there are people who can't do those things, and they're a lot of the time left out. And in those moments, I've learned that because I've faced it myself. I think in my journey, it's interesting because like I've had to face so many different parts of life and lived so many lives for maybe short amount of time, but at least in those moments, I've been able to relate and to live with maybe something that someone does have to live with forever, and how strong you have to be, and what it takes every day to face a world, you know, that isn't really made for you or accepting of you, or, you know, just because you look a certain way, you're immediately judged or just seen as you can't do it. And that's not true.
Were you going outside during that 8 months?
Barely. I hid myself. I didn't even like, maybe just to like somewhat get my dog outside. My mom would kind of force me, but I wouldn't. I would just definitely want to stay in my own little world, as dark as possible, and just hide.
As dark as possible.
Yeah, because I didn't want to see outside because I couldn't go outside. Like I used to look at people with legs and be so pissed because I'm like, why do they have their legs and I don't? Because you're so depressed and so like just in this zone of like you don't want to live anymore, let alone like you're angry at the world because just of life, because you can't live it the way that you used to. And yeah, it was just a really dark time of trying to figure out, again, why am I here? What am I doing? Is there a place for me? I didn't think I would ever be accepted by the modeling world at all, let alone looked at, let alone find love, genuine love. I didn't even think of life. I just thought of how can I get out of this misery? And that's why I was like just contemplating suicide daily. Every day I was just like, how can I do this?
It's really just really hard to think about when you see no light at the end of the tunnel for such a long period of time. Like there's never been through hard things in my life, but there's always been a glimmer of light even at the end of a tunnel. And to be in a situation where you're waking up every day and there is no light at the end of the tunnel as far as you can see, but carrying on regardless.
I don't know how I did it.
How did you do it?
I did it, my faith, also knowing that I have this purpose, that I have to, scream out on the toppest mountain that I possibly can find and yell and get people to pay attention. And I think realizing that I'm just the lucky one really gives me the fight for these next generations to come, to not allow this to ever happen again to another soul, and to hopefully change the world to where that this is not an issue anymore. And it may take my entire life, but that is my purpose.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.